Everybody's seeing my screen, correct? All right. So as I mentioned at the top, welcome to our session today, Black Empowerment Works, our approach to grant review. Wanted to talk a little bit today about how we show up and how we want to shift the narrative around grant review and philanthropy. So just to do some introductions, today our speakers are going to be myself, of course. My name is Jeremiah Pennebaker. I am the Senior Associate for Black-led Social Change. And with me, I have Ms. Diamond Brown from Xavier University. She is a two-time community reviewer. And we also have Mr. Chris Macklin from Talbot House. He's a three-time community reviewer and champion of change. The champions of change is actually the folks who founded and created the Black Empowerment Works program. So big shouts out to Chris. So on today's agenda, really want to hit a few things and get you all out of here, but we're going to talk a little bit about what is Black Empowerment Works, give you all the foundation and understanding of what we're looking to do as a program, talk a little bit about our goals, vision, and our approach to the work. We're going to hear from our reviewers because I don't want to talk this whole time. Really, I want to turn it over to them and their expertise. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit about the community reviewer opportunity that we have before us and hopefully encourage some folks to apply. So to kind of paint the broad picture, to set us up on the foundation, United Way is in the work of systems change, of building solutions, aligning systems to help our community thrive. As you see on the right-hand side here is this kind of iceberg imagery. And what we're looking to do as a part of United Way is really address the root causes, some of the things that are up under the water that are not always very visible to the eyes, but how do we transform mental models and shift power to folks within the community and resource folks who aren't typically resourced. So Black-led social change exists because we are compelled to hold space and provide resources to imagine and bring to life unencumbered, self-determined Black futures. And that's a great quote that we kind of used as our tagline as we are starting to think about what we're looking to do with this program. But what does that actually mean? So unencumbered, the definition of unencumbered is not impeded, slowed down, free to move, advance, or go forward. And the reason I want to kind of frame it this way is in the beginning or in the past, the Black-led Social Change Initiative began as a response to a deficit. We used to kind of frame it in the idea of, in the facts that there are an overrepresentation of Black families who live in poverty, but there's an underinvestment in Black-led ideas and Black-led ideas that invest back into the community. So and that is national. So what we're looking to do as a part of the Black-led Social Change Initiative was to address that. But that, like I said, that began as a response to a deficit. And what we're looking to do is how can we shift our frame of reference around that towards investing in Black futures. So a little bit of the nitty-gritty details. What is Black Empowerment Works? I like to say that Black Empowerment Works is a grant program that's about more than the money. We seek to build and resource a community of Black change makers and co-conspirators who are passionate about and invested in Black futures. We're looking to really build that community of folks who are looking to help uplift the Black community. I think that was the original vision of the Champions of Change, and I hope that we are pushing that forward to the best that we can, but that's what we look to do as a part of Black Empowerment Works, and that is how we, those are the values we look to impress on the folks who are part of the program. So what exactly is Black Empowerment Works? The program goals are to provide resources to community-based Black-led work, build solutions and transform systems, engage community members as decision makers. A reason I have this bold is because that's kind of what we're going to focus on today is like, what does it look like to engage community members and have them be the ones who make the decisions around the funding? And finally, contribute to an ecosystem of support for Black social change makers. Like I said, ultimately, we do want to create a network of folks who are invested in Black futures and willing to lean on and work with one another and really contribute to the overall uplift of the community. Just some quick notes on what's eligible, what needs to be eligible for the grant. So it has to fall within the United Way 9 county regions, 9 county service regions. So that's the geographic focus. Black leadership and labor. It needs to be both led and headed. The work needs to be headed up by Black folks, led by Black folks, but also the work that's being done needs to be intentionally geared towards working with the Black community or investing in the Black community. Grassroots community based. This is really just a nod to folks who are in the communities doing their work. We don't want this to be a top down effort that comes from outside of the folks who are actually within the community, providing a community benefit. This is really just shifting away from traditional small business grants. We want to have the money that we invest in a organization go directly to the community and not a individual business or group. And finally, actionable within the grant year. We want the money to not sit. We really want it to go into the community within the grant year. So as of right now, grant year is from September to September. So when we make an investment, we want to make sure that that investment provides results within the grant year. And as Janae mentioned at the top, if there are any questions or things, feel free to put them in the chat. So I want to do a quick overview of the process again to just provide some kind of context and grounding. We opened up applications for both the community reviewer position and the grant applicant position on May 1st. The reviewer application closes on June 5th. And between June 5th and June 28th, when the grant application closes, we'll be making selections and training the reviewers and getting them prepared to do the individual review. There's going to be more information to come about that, but really pulling folks together and getting them prepared to read through these applications. From July 10th to the August 22nd, that is when that independent review will come into play, working with one another, working in teams of 3 to 5 as a small group and reading a subset of the applications, and then finally making those funding decisions towards the end of August. On August 23rd, letters will go out to all applicants about the decisions that are made, and then public announcement about the decisions. The grantee list will be shared on August 28th. So I've kind of touched on it a little bit, but what exactly is a community reviewer? The way we define a community reviewer is just folks who are invested in Black futures, able to commit to the process throughout the summer of reviewing applications, training, and really attending and having conversations with the grant applicants. To be a community reviewer, no experience is required. Like I said, we provide the training, we kind of get you set up and provide to you what those values and what the experience will look like. But finally, we want folks who are active in their communities and empathetic. And the empathy piece is really huge, just in the sense that you're going to be reading these applications, having these conversations with applicants, and being able to kind of see where they're coming from, put yourself in their shoes, but also recognize that this is work that they put their blood, sweat, and tears into. And how do we both respect that and give them good feedback, whether or not they are selected to receive the grant. So just a little bit more about committing to the process. I counted, so it's about a 30-hour commitment between June 15th and the 21st. Like I said, and that's going to be inclusive of different training pieces, meeting with your small teams, holding conversations with the applicants. So each team will hold about a 30-minute conversation with their grant, with the application that they are reading. So, and we'll explain a little bit more about that. But each team will hold a 30-minute conversation with their grant applicant. And this requires both virtual and in-person meetings. So that is just something to be aware of. So I talked a little bit about kind of the hard stuff, like the very technical show up here, dates and things. I want to talk a little bit about the values that we have as a part of the program and the values that we look to have in our reviewers when they are reading through these applications and making selections. We believe that those closest to any opportunity or challenge are also the ones who are closest to the solution. This really goes back to that kind of grassroots foundation of Black empowerment works, which is why, like I said, that is part of the eligibility requirement, but it's also why we look to have community reviewers be the ones who make the selections. We believe that the folks who volunteer, raise their hands up, the folks who are active in the communities, the folks who are living and working in these spaces every day are the ones who should have the say of what gets funded and what doesn't get funded, and who is actually making the changes within their community. We choose to view the Black community and the work that we review through an asset-based lens. And really, this is just a nod to recognizing that in the past, there's been a lot of stereotyping and pathologizing, that's an SAT word, of Black work in the Black community. And what we're doing is kind of trying to turn that on its head. For example, like, can we recognize that ballet provides a certain structure to kids' lives and the people who participate in it, but that same view and lens of ballet is not also placed on street dance and other work that is viewed as traditionally Black. So we're looking to kind of flip that lens and have folks understand that empowerment, uplift can come from a multitude of places, specifically places that are traditionally Black. We honor folks' work and valuing people over paperwork. Speaking specifically to this is why we hold those grant applicant reviewer conversations. We recognize that not everything about somebody's work can come across on a sheet of paper or something that's typed out online. We want to give applicants the opportunity to speak life into their work, provide that energy and things as they are applying for the process. But we also want the reviewers to have a chance, like I said, recognize that they are working with somebody's work, like literally sometimes working with somebody's baby, and how they can provide good feedback and put a face to that work. We show up as ourselves and create space for others to do the same. Really, we want ourselves, both as the Black Empowerment Works team and as reviewers, to show up as yourself, show up as the experience that you've had, the places that you've been. I'm not showing up with a name tag like I'm a representative of this place, but instead I'm showing up as Jeremiah, providing feedback as Jeremiah in the spaces that I've been. And we look for our reviewers to do the same, show up as yourself. We will provide the training and give you kind of like the alleyways of how to make the reviews and things, but we want to show up as a person who's been within the community, who has an understanding of DEI education as Diamond does, or a lot of the different community work that Chris Macklin has done in the past as well. So like I said, show up as yourself and create space for others to do the same. Finally, we seek to build joy and community among Black changemakers in Greater Cincinnati. Really something that I've mentioned at the top, we're really just looking to build that network. We want folks to have fun, feel like the joy that comes from being a part of Black Empowerment Works, reviewing applications, seeing somebody's work get boosted up, seeing somebody's organization grow. We've seen that joy in the past, and we're looking to build that as we continue to do this work in Greater Cincinnati. So, what exactly does it look like to invest in Black futures? And I'm going to give you some examples here, but I definitely want to hear from everybody in the audience as well. But like, what exactly does it look like to invest in Black futures? It can be a multitude of things. As you see right here, we have this young boy who's a part of our Black Boys in Tech program. You see how happy he is, but like, this was a day where they brought in about 15 to 20 young boys, middle school to elementary school age, and they actually learned how to put together drones. And like, you can see like the joy and the very focused, intense look from the students behind them. But like, these kids were very excited. They're actually having their graduation and presenting some of their drones this coming Saturday. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Down here, we have a program that is looking to invest in like Black men and changing some of their aspects from always having to do what Tata Phyllis calls, one of our grantees, Tata Phyllis calls John Henryism, the need to show up and always be strong, always be hard, and always be ready to work and fight and carry the world on your back. This Diasporic Soul program really looked to help Black men create spaces for rest and connection and reconnect with the culture and step away from the need to be the John Henry of the community. Right here, we have Sowing Seeds, who provides postpartum doula care for families who bring home their children and some families who don't bring home their children, but they provide meals. Sometimes they take care of the newborn. They provide all kinds of services for folks who are really just learning about how to be a parent and like don't always have like the resources and things to do it right the first time. And then finally, we have ICANN Health, who provides ICANN manuals around diabetes prevention and management in the Black community. They do barbershop talks and go out to different hospitals, work with different nursing programs and things in order to kind of host these spaces and provide more information to the Black community. So like I said, I feel like I've been talking a lot, but I did want to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like to have these. These are all Black Empowerment Works grantees, and these are the folks who went through the program, have had conversations with the applicants, and have been able to kind of achieve their dreams through the Black Empowerment Works process and been able to build upon the work that they were already doing. So I would like to take a quick second if there are any questions in the audience, but I would like to ask, what does it look like to invest in Black futures to you all? What do you think it might look like to invest in Black futures? Oh, yes, sorry, come off mute. Come off mute and feel free to just talk to us a little bit about what you think it looks like to invest in Black futures.
So to me, investing in Black futures looks like investing in first, I don't want to say first or last, because nothing is higher than anything, but investing in Black women and in Black children and in the education of Black women and Black children, because obviously Black children push the future forward, but Black women are the ones who trickle everything down to the rest of the community. So when you heal the Black woman, you end up healing the entire community.
Okay, thank you for that. And in the chat, we have listening to people's truths and receive it as they stated from Ms. Tanya, expanding on the skills of our youth and making opportunities for them from Ms. Mary. Thank you, Andre. Push your family, education, exposure, healing, and advancement. Anyone else have any ideas around what it means to invest in unencumbered Black futures? Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you, Rosalind, providing spaces for people to be brave, authentic, and experience radical self-care. That's a great one. But yeah, thank you all for your participation. Like I said, I do want to, now that I've gotten some of the hard things out of the way, I do want to create a more of a conversational atmosphere. But I would like to turn to our guests today, Diamond, Chris. What do you think it looks like to invest in unencumbered Black futures, and how has that looked being a part of this Black Empowerment Works program?
I didn't expect my face to be up here. Hi, everyone. My name is Diamond Brown. Like Jeremiah said, I use she, her pronouns. Like he also said, I work at Xavier University as Assistant Director in our Center for Diversity and Inclusion. So as you would imagine, my answer is very specific to working with Black students, because that is a space in which I currently work in. So to me, it looks like investing in, supporting, and creating space for Black students to, one, be themselves, two, be able to support them in a way that allows them to see themselves beyond whatever circumstance they're in. I work with a lot of students who are really exceptional, and some of them recognize that, and then some of them don't, and really have a hard time seeing that because of the spaces they occupy and the places they've been, and experiences they had. So to me, investing in Black future looks like helping them see the value that I see in them, and really helping them to navigate different spaces in their Blackness and showing up as their full authentic selves. I feel like there was a second half to that question, Jeremiah. I just don't know what it was.
No, that was fine. It's really just what does it look like to do it for, like, what does it do for you? But yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was like, do you have anything to add, Chris?
Yeah, I think to pinpoint off what she said, for me, the work is just working with vulnerable families. It started out with the veteran population, but as we all know, all veterans have family, regardless if it's parents, mothers, spouses, children, whatever. And so my thing is just really being a catalyst or a spark so that people can see or manifest those ideas and dreams that they have of economic growth and sustainment. Just being that bridge so they can do that. And that's what keeps me involved in this work and what started me down this pathway. It's just making sure that there is a, like you said earlier, a non-traditional path to where we can, formalize our ideas in a group setting and strengthen each other's work through a community aspect.
I was like, that's beautiful. Thank you. So thank you for that. And like, I guess my next question would be, how do you apply that like mindset? How do you apply what you view in investing in Black futures? How do you apply that when you come and show up as a community reviewer for Black Empowerment Works?
You want me to go? So she sort of gave me the little wink. Well, basically is just allowing that dream again to manifest. And part of that is a strategy that I've tried to adopt on an individual basis, but use a KPI system of keeping people invested, interested, informed, and inspired. And we can only do that if we provide these types of platforms where people of color can come together. And, like-minded people can get together and we can help formulate these dreams so that it enhances the whole community. I look at some of the work that's been done and some of the grants that have been passed out. And as I drive past places and I see their thriving business and their impact they're having on the community and how that one little seed has grown and manifested into a community of flourishment.
Oh, yes, I feel like that's hit the nail on the head there. I guess I would add that I think it's also really important, and please let me know if I'm answering this question, but if I'm answering a different question, just let me know. But I think it's really important to kind of put into practice the same things that we are uplifting. So recognizing in the review process, like that everyone is not going to be like a grant writer. Speaking from experience, I'm not a grant writer, but I had to write a grant before. It is a very cumbersome process. So in reviewing that, also recognizing like folks are, taking the time to put out their dreams and their efforts and life's work, out to be reviewed to the public, something that they're very passionate about and have, for some and most people invested like, a lot of their time and life and energy into. So recognizing that and recognizing that, yes, there might be some folks who aren't the best writers, but being able to really get to the point of what it is that they're uplifting. And as long as it's in alignment with what we're looking for from Black Empowerment Works, putting that at the forefront and taking out of account, right? Like, oh, you had the spelling error or this, that, and the third, right? Like that stuff doesn't really matter. What matters is making sure that the work that these folks are doing is in alignment to what we're trying to uplift to Black Empowerment Works. And I think for me, it even goes beyond like the reviewing. One of the things that I really appreciate about the process was a lot of the folks who even didn't get grants, like I was able to see some of the work they're doing and uplift it in different ways, whether it be like I have students who are interested in volunteer opportunities, so like I can share those with them. And so even for those who aren't getting the funds, and like I recognize the funds are really important, so let me say that, but even for the ones who aren't, still being able to uplift them and support that work that's being done and finding different and creative and intentional ways to still connect them to places and people and resources to help them do that work. Even if they don't get that funding, we can still help. How can we still help uplift them? Because I think even beyond the funding, Black Empowerment Works is about uplifting change makers who are trying to create change for Black folks. So how are we doing that beyond just financial? And even for people who get the grants, right? Like, how can we make sure that we're still connected with them even after they've already gotten the funding? Yeah, I just feel like I've met a lot of amazing people through Black Empowerment Works, both grantees, folks who've applied to be, who've received grants, folks who were reviewers, like really just a whole gambit, and have just met some really exceptional people who I feel like I've been able to connect with and hopefully provide some kind of support in the way that they provided support and community and space for me. I think that answered your question.
No, you hit the nail on the head. Thank you, David. That definitely answered the question, and actually leads a little bit into my next question. Both of you have been reviewers for several years now. I guess it's a two-folded question. What are some of the biggest like rewards and like positive things that come out of it? What are some of like the hardest parts, and why do you keep doing it?
So I'm gonna start with the hardest part. The hardest part is not being able to fund everybody, and in my world, as a reviewer, when I read some, you have to score them based on what you hear and what you read, but a lot of them are great ideas that deserve some type of funding. And that's the hardest part is trying to make that decision of who gets what funding and why. Because like I said, there's a lot of great ideas out there, and some of the people that we have not funded over the years, as you follow them, you still see the success. And one young man told me that it was the structure provided by United Way or Black Empowerment Works that really was the catalyst to him moving forward, even without the funding. And so that's the hardest part for me. I don't know if you want to break this into two questions, Diamond, or you want to answer the second part of that. So
yeah, we can break it into two because my answer will be hopefully pretty short. I say that, I talk a lot though. But yeah, I would echo that. I think, even though I said earlier, like even the people who don't get funding, like it is hard, I think, to have to decide, like, right, who gets the funding and who doesn't, because like Chris said, a lot of these folks, or really all these folks, have great ideas. It's not like they don't have great ideas, but obviously we have a limit to how much money we can give. So I think for me, that's the hardest part. And then, that's really the hardest part. Yeah.
And I guess, what would you say is the biggest reward or best thing you love about it?
Yeah. Again, seeing the success stories, seeing people flourish. And, it was, what was it, last week or a couple of weeks ago, the young lady who does the diabetes thing that you just talked about.
DASA, yeah.
Just seeing how that's taken off, and to have people that I'm associated with come back and told me, when I asked veterans or families, what have you done for self-care? And they tell me they took her class. And I'm like, wow, I was a part of her review team. So, that kind of stuff is rewarding in itself, to see that the work is being done and that is really affecting people's lives in our community.
Yeah, I think I'd add all that. And the part that's like most rewarding to me is just being able to make the connection. So community is really important to me. And so being able to build community with folks who are doing the work, that reflects what I'm passionate about, and being able to help others in their passions. I think also being able to see, like Chris said, the folks who are, receiving those grants, doing that work. For me, I personally know a few folks who have gotten it. And so it's really exciting to see folks that I know and like personally who have put a lot of hard work and effort into their projects and purpose that they're fulfilling. And being able to see them being able to do that so much more once they are provided that funding to take it to the next step and next level. And I'll also say the connections I've made is really my favorite part too. I don't think he's in here, or I don't know if he's in this year, if he'll be part of it, but Phil Cunningham is someone that I met through Black Empowerment Works. He did a session for reviewers about how do we kind of combat bias. And some of the stuff he was talking about, I was just like, wow, this is like really great material. And for context, the program that I oversee is a program for first-gen students, students of color, and low-income students. So they all get connected with peer mentors, and I have to train these mentors. And some of the things he was talking about, I was just like, wow, this would be really great if I can get some of my mentors to get this material. And I'm like, wait, I could literally just ask this man to come and give this material to my mentors. And so I did, and this is the third year now that I'm working with him. And every year we continue to do more work with my students and had a hugely positive impact. And it's just been really exciting to see how making those connections could even help grow, for me, right, the program that I oversee, but I also recognize that in other spaces, those same things are happening. So when those connections are made, the work that's being done can be done more intentionally than it's already being done, and in community and with more support, and impact an even larger amount of folks who might otherwise never have gotten the opportunity or space to engage with these resources and these folks. So I always think that's really exciting too.
Honestly, like I said, y'all are killing it. Thank you for that. Another question that I have, and we had Janae already mentioned this, and we have one question on the deck already, but if you have any questions for Diamond or Chris, feel free to put them in the chat. We're gonna open it up after this last question for me. I'm wondering what are, like, how do I frame this? How has working as a community reviewer, has that had like an impact on the way that you like view the Cincinnati community, or like the possibilities around it? I know we already talked about like, hey, like seeing people grow and things like that, but like what are some of the ways that's kind of impacted the way you view the community around you?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, in the past with I would say community relations, racial relations, it's been a dark cloud, in my opinion, over Cincinnati. This work has allowed some rays of sunshine to break through. And I think as we continue this work, we'll get more and more sun coming through that dark cloud, you know, providing equity and inclusion for grant processes. You know, to me, it's just, you know, I don't think that would happen in the business world without this work being done. And so that's my take on it. And I hope Diamond expand on that, make me sound like I know what I'm talking about. But it's just, for me, there was no formal way of me becoming an entrepreneur. There was no formal process, because I'm not a grant writer either. And so that path seemed to be a very daunting path. And as we travel this yellow brick road of life, you know, at what point am I going to get the support I need in the form of courage to keep moving, and the brain power to be able to think this through and to do all the things that you need to do? And without this grant and this movement, we wouldn't be able to have that in Cincinnati.
Chris, I think you said it great. I'm not cheating that. But I will add, I think for me, the way it impacted in which I view the community around me. So as I'm sure I've mentioned like 16 different times, I do diversity, equity, inclusion work. So that's like essentially what I eat, breathe, and sleep. And a lot of times when I hear news or information about things that are going on in regard to that, especially my role at the university, is not usually in a positive light. And sometimes it is, right? We have moments to celebrate DE&I work and space and folks, but oftentimes it's a lot of putting out fires and a lot of creating space for people because harm has been done to different communities. And how can we make sure that those folks are in a space where they can heal and be at peace and feel some sense of safety and security? And I think for me, being a reviewer allowed me to see the space in which I could provide for not only my students, but my colleagues and myself, to be able to utilize those resources that I otherwise wouldn't know were in the city. So I think I mentioned earlier, like bringing Phil in, but there have been other opportunities when I've been able to connect with folks to just bring into or individually connect to like students or coworkers who I know like could utilize those resources. And had I not been a reviewer, I would have never known they existed. And I think it also, like Chris said, shines a light and, you know, through the dark clouds of like all the things that are often going on and happening to Black people in different spaces, to be able to see that there is still joy and good and love and compassion for us, not just like nationally, but like in our city right next door, and in our community with one another. So I think that's what I would say in terms of how I think that it's impacted the way in which I viewed the community of Cincinnati.
Well, no. Thank you both. And ditto, and I hope Those words hit everybody. I do want to open it up to the crowd, not crowd, but everybody else if they have questions for Diamond or Chris. Ms. Tanya asks, how do you handle a conflict of interest for reviewers who have connections with folks who have applied for the grants? I can answer this one a little bit, Ms. Tanya, but when when we're forming the grant teams, we're pulling folks together in teams of 3 to 5 folks. We have the reviewers fill out conflict of interest forms. So if they know people who are like leading up some work, we just try to make sure that they're not reviewing the same work. So if you know somebody who's a part of the grant and you are a reviewer, just kind of let us know. We'll make sure that there's not a conflict of interest when it comes to that.
To build on that answer a little bit, in the grant application, we ask the question of who are all of the leaders attached to your work. And we ask that question intentionally so that when we're building out this really long conflict of interest form, where we're asking reviewers, do they have direct, indirect, potential conflicts of interest, we're able to not only list the name of the organization, but all of the leaders attached. And then the United Way team here has the fun job of putting together portfolios of applications for teams to review where no single person within that team has a real or perceived conflict with any of the applications they're reviewing. So we do take that we don't take that lightly.
I think they're being modest too, I'd just like to say, because she made it sound really easy, but it's a lot of people. Personally, for somebody who, did the conflict interest form, it is really long. And then I'll be like, oh, I don't know anybody on here. And then I go through and it's like 16 people. I'm like, oh yeah, I know them. Oh yeah, I do know that they're doing that work. I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, well, dang, who they're about to put me in a group with who also like doesn't have hopefully any conflicts with any of the other groups that I don't know. And like, hopefully they don't either. So I think it's like I imagine it's a very expansive and time-consuming process. So I think they are being really modest in saying that, just putting that out there.
It's not that bad. But no, thank you, Diamond. Andre is asking, what are current trends or needs that you feel like you haven't seen enough in proposals to address? I would open it up to you. I guess I would provide a little bit of the context. So each review team only sees a subset of the applications. So we got like 200 something applications last year, and each review team probably seen 13 or 15 to 17 of those last year. So, but I would open up to you all. What are some of the work that you would like to see in reviews coming up?
As when you talk about trends, I think about the 8 domains of wellness. I think about, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and mental health is running rampant in our community. So when you think about your service projects, when you think about your grant application, if you're tied to that, stay connected to that. Don't try to recreate the wheel to acquire this grant. If you're doing work that is well embedded in this community, keep doing that work, put your best foot forward, and just be ready to explain how you can add to the value of work being done. So often we see people come in that they have a body of work and then they try to expand it to do something else. And that's where, for me, a lot of your gains are lost at that point.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. I think kind of what Jeremiah said, I'm sure there's like more. We only see like a section of them. So there are definitely gaps that are missing, but part of mine is missing because like I know people who are doing the work in those areas. And so like I don't get those applications. But I think when we see the entire, like, because at the end they'll show us like the full list of everyone. And like it's pretty expansive and goes over a lot of different areas, even stuff like you don't even, or maybe you don't, I don't think about that. I'm like, oh, wow, that's like really great. And I never thought about how this work impacts the Black community and how intentional like you have to be in addressing some of those things. I think to echo what Chris said, I think mental health is a huge one. I feel like I keep saying the same thing. I work at a university, but a lot of my students, like especially this past year, I've seen an extremely high amount of not only students with anxiety, but students with extremely high anxiety and depression, and I mean like really a gambit of like mental health concerns and needs. So I think mental health is a huge area that is, I think it's really well represented, but I mean, I don't know that you can ever have enough. I also was a psych major, so I'm also biased in that, and I recognize that. So trying to think what other areas, there's just yeah, there's a lot of areas that Black Empowerment Works covers. Like there's a bunch of different categories, I think. I mean, there's somebody in every one. And I think they've expanded it, if I'm not mistaken, Jeremiah, from like people who add stuff to that area they hadn't had before. So I don't know that really answers your question, whoever asked that. So. Yeah.
No, I was like, we do have a lot of work that we cover, multitude of focus areas, and there is always space to add something if you feel like you have something new. We're always looking to expand on that. One thing, if I could like throw in like my own like shameless plug, I would love to see a little bit more mobilizing and power building work. We've gotten a little bit of that in the last couple of classes, but really just what can we do to have more work that looks like that, building power within the communities and collective activity of folks.
I will add, sorry, if we're being shameless plugs, at higher ed. So Black students in higher ed, because I work in higher ed Black students and they always need more support. So yeah, I'd say that. I'm sure that's there, but we need help. So yeah.
For sure. Are there any other questions in the chat or in the audience? We'll do a final scan. Hearing none. You can always, like I said, reach out to myself or the rest of the Black Empowerment Works team should you have any questions and things. I do have one more question, I guess, for you both, Diamond and Chris. What advice or what would you say to somebody who's considering being a reviewer, but they don't know if they can meet the time commitment, or they having like issues with that, or like not even time commitment, but they're just unsure about the position of what they can bring to it? Oh, actually, there's all the businesses. Miss Tanya, could you say a little bit more about your question? I'm sorry, I just seen that pop up.
It seems like from the examples, a lot of them had youth-centered focuses. And I was just wondering if that was a requirement, or do you do both youth and adult centered businesses?
No, we well, one, Black Empowerment Works, like we review the applications that we get, but we do accept both youth-centered work, adult-centered work. We had a grantee last year that specifically focused on the elder population. So folks of all age ranges are accepted, or work, including folks of all age ranges.
Thank you.
No problem. But yeah, if there are any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But yeah, I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about, or give somebody, or what would you say to somebody who's considering applying to be a reviewer, but they weren't sure, and why should they do it?
I'll go first. I think if I'm not mistaken, when you at first said the question to you said something about time. I don't say this like happily, but I'm a very busy person, unfortunately. My schedule just gets really packed between work and like, life, as I'm sure everyone else's does. And I wasn't really sure if Black Empowerment Works was something that I'd be able to do, but I know it's something I really wanted to do when I heard about it. And this is going on the third year for me. And I will say they're very intentional, that's not a word, intentional about creating space and time for folks to be able to work with their schedules. So there are some parts for my job in the summer I can be more flexible. Like right now, I can do this. But then there are certain dates, like when we get in August, where there are dates I can't compromise just because our students are getting back, and I have to be there to support them and welcome them. And I like communicate that pretty clearly, and they like work with my schedule and around it to make sure that I'm still able to show up fully and completely. And I think also when you get paired on your teams, right, like your team members, at least the ones I've been, blessed to engage with, have been really understanding and kind, and knowing that like, hey, I might be like 5 minutes late to this, but I'm gonna make sure I'm there, and just, communicating that to other team members or whoever else we might be meeting with, and just really filling in the gaps where need be. So I think it's about like communicating your availability, and then like relying on the Black Empowerment Works team, knowing that they'll do their best to work with your schedule to make it still work for you, and then to rely on your team members. Once you're in those teams, you'll see a little bit more what I mean about communicating with them your needs and making sure that you all are on the same page. That only answered the time piece. There was something else you asked.
Oh no, you hit it. I was really just wondering, like, what advice would you give somebody if they're worried about time or any other pieces of it? Yeah.
Yeah, you should do it. You should do it if you have the capacity. I think it's actually been a really I don't know, like it's work, right? But I don't know that it feels like work in the same way of like when you're really passionate about something. Like it's still work, obviously, right? Taking up your time and your energy and effort. But I think it's a really great opportunity to be able to learn more about what's going on in our community. And I think for me, it helped me to be able to find space to be able to uplift the work that's really important to me in ways that I can't do at work. Like I said, I work with college students and they are very needy. So most oftentimes my focus and energy is on them and I don't always have the space capacity to do other things. So I think it's also nice in the sense that like it's relatively short compared to some of the other opportunities you can engage in, to be able to still do that work and then not taking up like the whole year or years, right? It's only a couple months, and I still get to see a really big impact and have a really big, what's the word? I can't think of the word. The word when you like
influence.
No, it's like when you get something back.
Fulfillment.
Maybe fulfillment's the word, but yeah, like return. That's the word I'm looking for. Fulfillment is good though too. Yeah, all the words you said and return. I think it's a really huge return in knowing like what's going on in the community and being able to make those connections and help other folks make those connections too. So that's me.
Yeah, I think the time requirements that are on paper, when I initially looked at it, were kind of scary. But as you get into the work, like Diamond said, there was times when our sessions ended and we were like, man, we need more time. Or, we stayed on the call, and for those days that people can't make it in this technical era, we recorded it and we sent it to that person so that they could be abreast and actually have input for the next meeting, or they would send notes prior to the next meeting. So we were all still connected and vibing on the same, wavelength. So I think that there's workarounds with that. I don't know if Janae is going to kill me, but if you can be present for 85 to 90% of the work and the other 10%, in a hybrid capacity, Janae is going to probably kill me. But I just think that there's workarounds, and I think there's ways if you want to invest in your community and you want to create a network outside of your traditional network and continue to grow and learn, as Diamond said, I think this is the perfect opportunity, especially if you're young in that C-suite world or trying to enter that C-suite world. Most of the connections that I've made, they're progressing up the same ladder as I'm progressing. So when I have issues, I will still reach out to some of those guys and say, hey, champions as well as reviewers, man, look, this is what I'm going through. How do I make this work? How do I fulfill this obligation? Or how do I do this? And I think within the structure that's set up and the people that you're connected with, it allows you that additional platform to do what you have to do.
Thank you both. I was like, I'll try to hold Janae back, Chris. But thank you both for your time. Thank you everybody for showing up today. Like I said, we're recording this session. And if you do have any questions or anything that does come up post this session, feel free to reach out to us. We have our information right here. If you have any questions or concerns, you can reach us through black-led@uwgc.org. And our Black Empowerment Works hotline number is listed here as well, 513-762-7233. Also, really just implore people, if you know somebody, if you're interested yourself, apply to be a community reviewer. As Chris and Diamond have said here today, it is really impactful, and it pours both back into the community and back into yourself. Applications close June 5th. Again, thank you all for showing up, and I'll give you some
one
time
more
back.
statement. I want to make sure that it's clear that if you are applying for grant funds this year, you cannot also apply to be a community reviewer. So it's an either or option, but both opportunities have a lot of great value. If there's someone that if you're perhaps interested in applying for a grant, but there are people that in your network that want to be on the other side of that process, feel free to send this information out to them. Again, this is open to anyone to serve as a community reviewer. So we had some folks that were reviewers in past years that said, I don't know that I'm ready to submit an application yet, but I want to see what the other side of this looks like. So ditto to everything Jeremiah just said. Wanted to slide in that final comment. Take us home, Jeremiah.
Yep. Well, thank you. But yeah, that is it, everyone. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out to us. But we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Looking forward to seeing your applications.